Hello dear subscribers and watchers, welcome back again. This is me Said Aliya here, Sir from Computer Science for Self-Taught. And in this video I'm gonna talk about another amazing thing about multi-threading, which is sending messages from your main thread to your background thread. In the previous videos we have been talking about handlers, thread and other things since the part 1 or 2 videos. So if you guys haven't seen them, please go back and check them out, because this one depends completely on your understanding of the previous stuff that we have discussed so far. And in this video, as I've told you earlier, that I'm gonna teach you how you can send message from your main thread to the background thread. On the previous videos we have learned that we can send messages from background thread to the main thread, and in this video we will learn sending messages from the main thread to the background thread. I mean, we make a background thread which is capable of having its own message queues and its own handlers and loopers, and we will make this background thread capable of handling incoming messages. Before I go and dig further about this, I almost forgot in the previous videos that there are basically two ways that you can work with threads. Either you can implement from the thread or runnable. Before I talk about sending messages from main thread to the background thread, I'm gonna teach you how you can use both of them. Okay, first create another class. You can also specify it as private or public, it depends on your choice. And I say my background thread. Either you can extend from the thread class or implement the runnable interface. First, I'll show you how you can use with thread. And in here, you must implement the run method. And in here, inside the run method, you will write your work which you want to be done in the background thread, and then those messages from the background thread should be transferred to the main thread. If you create a constructor in here as the name of my background thread, in here this part of code, whatever you write in here, this will be run on the main thread. If you want to do some modifications before you want to run the method run, so you can do some initializations or other stuff that you want, but whenever you want to put any task on the background thread, make sure that you write it inside your run method. And if you want to set the priority of your background thread to the highest priority, so use the process class inside your run method. Call the process class and call the method.setThreadPriority. If you write the lowest number, it means it has higher priority. If you give your background thread greater number, it means it has lower priority. So if you give at something like minus 100, it means that your thread has the highest priority. And if you give something like 100, it means your thread has the lower priority. So it depends upon your usage and your choice which one you like, but bear in mind that whenever you want to set the priority of your thread, so you can use this class inside your run method, and you can also pass in here the thread priority. In here I'm gonna loop for up to 200. If I was less than 200, so come on inside for loop, and I have to run on UI thread, new runnable, and I'll also use the text1.setText. So I use the string.value of, and I pass the value of I in here. Okay, and again it gives us error, so I have to initialize this inside the main class. So I have to remove, and I initialize it in the background thread. Boom, the thread, there is no problem now. And make sure that you put the thread sleep in here, so you have to see each step that the numbers are changing. So I have to put it to 100 milliseconds, and inside the on create I handle the button. If button 1 was clicked, create the my background thread, and initialize this to my background thread, and then use the object of my background thread dot start. Let's see on what happened. When I click on the first button, so it's going to update the text view to some numbers. Okay, so I'm gonna close this one. And I also minimize the emulator. So another way that you can use the thread, you can also implement the runnable interface. Okay, but it's a little bit different, but I recommend you to implement from the runnable interface. Implement runnable. Okay, and again you have to implement its method, which is run. So I have already written this. If you do not write it, so it gives you an error that you should implement its method. Again the same thing I want to do to my text view, so I'm gonna remove this constructor. But in here you do not need to write this much of code. So in here you remove this whenever you extend from the thread, so you have to write something like this. But whenever you implement the runnable interface, so use another thread, because the runnable interface has only run method. When I click on the runnable, so you can see it has only run method. So you have to use the thread to make your code multi-threaded. So I say new thread, I pass the object of my class, my background dot start. If you want to keep the reference and use it somewhere, you can also use the thread class, my thread equals to new thread, and pass the object of my background thread, and then use my dot start. Both are the same, but I use this style of coding in here. So let's run and see what happens. Again, same scenario like before, but the way that you use the way that you implement from the runnable interface and initialization is a little bit different. Okay, so I hope you have understand till this point. And now it's time that we should talk about transferring control or sending messages from main thread to the background thread. Okay, first I have to remove these lines of code, and in here I will extend from the thread class. Okay, and I have to implement the run method. So now we are gonna talk about sending messages from your main thread to your background thread. So for that you have to create another class as the name of my background thread and extend it from the thread class. And inside the run method, I want this class or this thread as a background thread to be capable of handling its own message queues, and it must have its own looper. As you know that for a thread to be capable of handling its own message queues, so first it must have its own handler. Okay? I create a handler inside this one handler. As I've told you before, wherever you initialize the handler, that handler will be bind to that thread. If you initialize the handler on the main thread, so it will bind itself to the main thread, and whenever you want to send messages from background thread, you can use that handler. But in here I use this handler to send messages from main thread to the background thread. So inside the run method, what I'm gonna do is, first I have to make this thread as a background thread to be capable of handling its own message queue. First we will create a message queue for this background thread. So I use the Looper class, and it has a static method as the name of Looper.prepare. So what it does, so it basically makes this thread into something which can have message queue, which is capable of handling its own message queues which keep coming from the main thread. In other words, it will create a message queue for this background thread. So the next thing, we need to initialize the handler in the background thread, because by using the handler we will put those messages inside the message queue. So I initialize the handler in the background thread. But again, wherever you initialize that handler will be bind, or it will have its reference to that thread. So I initialize this handler in the background thread, so this handler is bind to the background thread. But again, if you create another constructor like my background thread, okay, but again, if you initialize the handler inside this constructor, so this constructor, as you know, that will be run on the main thread. Do not do this. But I initialize the handler inside the run method, because this is the method where it will be run in the background. So again, we need to create a looper for this background thread, because we have created its message queue somehow and its handler. We need to keep this background thread alive. So this is where we use the Looper.loop. This looper will make this background thread alive. So it basically, what it does is the Looper.loop will pick each message, and what you want to do is process the message with the handler looper. Okay, so it will take one message from the message queue, and by using the handler it will handle it. And again, if there was another message in the message queue, again the looper will come inside the message queue and take that message queue and pass it to the handler. So let's see how we can use this. So first we have to create an instance of my background thread, or I mean we have to initialize this my background thread on the main thread. So I will create a variable of my background thread. So you must initialize this on the main thread. Okay, my background thread equals to new my background thread, and again my background thread dot start. Whenever you launch your app, a background thread will be created with its own message queue, with its own handlers and its own looper, and this this thread will be stored and it doesn't do anything right now. My idea is whenever the user click on the first button, so it's going to update that text view with some numbers. Okay, so this is where we will transfer or we will send messages from the main thread to the background thread. So how we can do that? I've already registered my button to the click listener. So inside the on click, I say my background thread. So I have to access to the handler that I've created in here, and I initialize this inside the run method. Okay? So how can I say that? My background thread dot handler, because the access modifier or access specifier is public. It can be accessed. If you choose private, it will not be accessed in here. And I call the post method on handler dot post. And again, it requires a runnable object. So either you can create a runnable object in here, or you can create it outside and then put that variable in here. Private runnable. Okay? And I initialize this equals to new runnable, and inside its run method I will update the UI. Okay? For example, I will transfer this messages I equals to 0 if I was less than 200, so increment the I, and then I want to update the UI. As you know that this message will be sent, or this thread will be sent to the background thread, so it will be doing its work in the background thread. So again we have to update the UI, so I use the run on UI thread. Okay, again it requires a runnable object, new runnable. So I say text v1 dot set text, so I have to cast this to a string, create the variable of I in here, otherwise it will not be accessed inside the inner class. I pass the I, so I have to put the thread into sleep for some minute. Current thread, I mean thread dot sleep up to 100 milliseconds, and I have to pass this runnable object inside the post. You can also create that runnable inside this method. I make the things simpler. Whenever the user click on the button, so a thread which has been already created, I mean a background thread which has already been created with its own message queue and other stuff, so it will post a runnable object, or it will pass a message from the main thread to the background thread, okay, to this thread, and that message or that task will be put inside the message queue, and by using the looper, that message will be picked from the message queue and it will be passed to the handler to handle it. As you can see, the handler can do two things. It can also handle messages and can also send messages, as you have done in here. So this is how you can transfer the control from the main thread to the background thread. Let's see what happens if we run this code. Does it work or not? You will see that. So when I click on the first button, let's see the magic behind multi-threading. Amazing, isn't it? You create a background thread which it has its own message queues, handlers, and looper. As you can see, we use the Looper.loop. This is where it will keep the background thread alive. So this is it. So let's see what happens to which thread we are running. If I use the log.v, or error, I use error in here. I say I use thread as a tag, and I have to get a current thread, thread.current thread.get name, and put it in here, and I say it is thread 1, which is our background thread. Okay, or I can write something like csfst, and again if I copy the same code and I put it inside this runnable object, where it is, this one. If I post it in here, you will see how it works. Also we will open the locket in here. Again we run this. When I put that tag in here, csfst, let's see what we get. The main thread, as you can see in here. Now we are in the main thread, which we have posted the thread name in here. Okay, now we are inside the main thread. When I click on the start thread 1, so the button 1 will be triggered and it will post that message into the background thread. Whenever it is clicked, so now we are in the background thread. Again, when I click that, let's see what is the thread name. As you can see, thread 2, which means we transfer the control from the main thread to the background thread. So again, if I further explain for you guys what we have done so far, I've already created a class as the name of my background thread, and it extends from the thread class. So I have to initialize the handler inside the background thread. Let's see what each step does. Looper.loop, it makes this thread into something which can have message queue, which is capable of handling its own message queues which keep coming, and the handler. You must initialize the handler inside the background thread, so it is responsible for handling messages that go towards the background thread from someone else. And the Looper.loop, you pick each message, and what you want to do is process the message with the handler looper. So this is how you can send messages from your main thread to your other thread. I mean, there are certain issues in this code here. If you guys run into some problems, if you aren't interested to know what those issues are, then I'll talk about it. Otherwise, this thing is done for now. So in the next video, we are gonna go further and see what we can explore, either about handlers or async tasks. I'm not sure what I'm gonna start in the next video. If you guys are new to this channel, make sure that you subscribe it, give us a thumb up, and share this video with your friends, and support my efforts and my channel by watching my videos through YouTube, any other ways you can, so I can make many more tutorials on many different subjects. Till next video, have fun learning. Peace out.